Hello, everyone, and welcome to, let's say, something a bit different on the Age of Bison YouTube channel. The 2v2 tournament when has come to an end, and congratulations to a team I won't reveal, whose name I won't reveal because there's a cast on the Ouija stream, and you can see it, and I won't spoil it for people that want to see it. It was a great tournament. And we had a lot of fun either casting it or playing it, depending on sometimes the days or the people. Today, we want to come to you with a new kind of content when we uh, go over not only the patch note, but the patch note, I would say, and how it shakes up the meta, the different places of the different civilization, um, what's expected to the civilization now, what was really strong before, what got nerfed, uh, and what popped up as the new effective ways to do it. And to be honest, these are just our thoughts. We are not pro players. We are all, like, I think, pretty much mid elo, 1,000 elo and up, and want to have a bit of fun poking around and seeing what's interesting and what's getting better or worse in our own humble opinion. I'm joined today with McLeaves and Platypus Slayer, all members of the Sun Bros Discord channel. How are you? How are you doing, guys?
Good. I'll just start. I'll let you go first, McLeaves.
Okay, yeah, well, fine. Really excited for this, of course, doing something different. And yeah, as I think we just look at every, we'll just be looking at every Civ at the moment and then see what changed, basically, and whether
Yeah.
people actually use it.
That's exactly it. We've had, about 3 weeks now since the patch has dropped. There's been a lot of experimentation. I would say that the meta and which Civ, matchups isn't not settled yet, but I would say people have a pretty good idea of like the cards and the play styles that each Civ is coming out of. Several Civs were completely reworked. So these are just, like I said, not pro players. We're not the likes of like Isaac or Kinesi, right? But this is what we're seeing at our Elo and around. So yeah.
All right, so let's start with the first on the list, Aztecs. Um, so, do any of you guys want to walk me through it, or do I start with the various changes on the patch note?
Oh, I love the Aztecs. I'd gladly have a look at those. It's one of my. It's probably my first main Civ, or it was actually. I don't really play them all that much anymore, but they're certainly very very fun and very different from most other Civs. But let's focus a bit on what changed for them. So basically, they had 5 villagers removed as a guard in H2. That was I would say it's a pretty important hit, but they have this card in H2 that now, so it's the priest card in H1, sorry, that also now buffs that one exactly. That now also buffs the warrior priest uh, work rate, and that kind of makes up for the veil loss. So you do have a bit of a trade-off here, I think. Aztec is really more geared into the sort of defensive or really being dependent on those priests more than anything else, and also much more than the other native civs. So that's something that's I think really important here. Another change was on the warriors that you can spawn on the plaza, which are basically your Minutemen, that were nerfed significantly, but you can get a bit more of them now.
So,
From what I've understood is that most people, most, like, let's say more advanced players, think that most of these changes are more of a trade-off rather than really a nerf or a buff.
I was going to point out too that this strategy, I think in particular, there was one more common at the higher levels, the uh, plaza lame, where you would put a forward plaza and just spam free infinite, no XP, no downside units at your opponent all day. Aztec was famous for its ability to defend with just basically the warrior priest spawning militia or doing combat themselves. And I think that got nerfed. Something else that isn't directly attributable, I think, in these cards is I believe Autotons got a range boost in Age 4 from their combat card. This
Oh,
helps
that's
in the
true.
late game. Of course, Autotons are
It
still
helps.
not as strong as like skirms, but it goes a good distance to help kind of filling out a hole in the Aztec roster. At least what I've been seeing on the ladder, Aztec players, like you said, McLeaves, they're much more kind of pigeonholed into a warrior priest boom, but that warrior priest boom's a bit more effective, and some of their knights, like I think their arrow knights got siege resist, and their jaguar prowl knights got a little bit of a buff. So
Also, there's a bit of a treaty change here for Coyote to better stand up against skirmishers, and then be a bit more, because be a bit more tough, because really Coyotes in late game they kind of fall off a little bit, even though they're great early. So that's I guess that's nice to see. They're tweaking the units a little bit. The Jaguar Knight, the Eagle Runner, some slight changes, but I think the most important one, as you pointed out, is probably the Coyote one and the Slingers.
So one interesting thing too is, I think the ERK from the Eagle Runner Knight for Aztec has always been this monster unit, and that everyone
Yeah.
trains that when it's massed, unless you have like a gigantic mass of artillery and somehow you didn't make any arrow knights, you were in a tough spot, really tough
The
spot.
only
Like,
thing that really beats is a Skirm, right?
yeah, or
in
maybe
mass.
and mass, and maybe like if you're
And
really
mass.
lucky, like a huge melee infantry pop because there's still shock infantry.
Oh,
But
true.
even then,
Actually, Rodoleros do really, really good against Eagle Runners.
that's true. Unfortunately, not everyone can be Spain, but I get your point.
Oh.
And but go Spain. Um, and yeah, so I think the idea behind it was to tone down a little bit the Eagle Runner so that it's actually a bit more vulnerable to skirms, and then give Aztecs a bit more options in exchange. Like maybe the Jaguar Knot is like slightly better now. I'm not sure we'll ever see it like being like massively used in the meta. Maybe Azam can
Well,
prove me
you do
wrong.
see the big buttons being used, but the big buttons, and also the shipments, because they are quite big and powerful shipments with the
And for
Jaguar
the
Knights.
pop
I don't
effect.
want to jump. Yeah. I don't want to jump ahead, but just imagine how Aztec, already having a bit of a weakness against Skirm, fares against a new OP melee Strelet.
That we
I
won't
don't even
name.
want.
Yeah, that's a rough interaction, huh?
Really.
It is. I say if you're an Aztec main, it's a bit of a tough time. I would hope that with some of the old crutches to defend on, like, with the warrior priests and spamming the militiamen, it opens up some more design space for the faction, and that way, maybe in some upcoming, probably not the update till spring, but maybe a patch here and there can increase to kind of dial them up. Because I feel like Aztecs are a civ that have always really struggled because A, they're very weird, they're very different, and then B, a lot of their strategies can be absolutely infuriating to play against. So, whether it was OP or not, probably not, but like everyone that's faced that forward plaza spam just knows how obnoxious it is. So I think it's a bummer that it seems like Aztecs, like I said, they lost the 5 villager card. Their ERK went down a bit, and all they really got compensated was slight bumps for underutilized units. If I'm wrong, let us know in the.
I have to say the buff. Sorry, the buff on the. So there's one of the cards got buffed for the arrow knights, and it gives them. If I recall, it was siege resistance. But maybe you can check it on the
Yep.
patch notes. But
You have it right there.
yeah, this one, yes.
The 0.1
So
siege
that
armor.
is a good change. That is a really good change. And then there's some extra HP on the Jaguar one as well.
So Jaguar is in H3,
Yeah, it's just
right
there. Yeah, but
Oh, you mean the
you can't
actual
really see the
Jaguar?
difference. No,
These guys.
you were on the right one. Actually, both of them got changed, but
Yes.
this used to be 15%, so that's basically the. So this is now a pretty strong card, and I think there was another change, but there's a lot of little. Unit improvement cards. Oh, sorry, it's the Mace card. The Mace card in H4 that got improved. The Mace card in H4, that's an interesting card. It was absolutely useless before when it was 10%. It didn't even add 1 damage to the slinger. It was bad. So I hope it's a bit better now.
I think it is, but I think again it's always tough because, and I won't name another cheap skirmisher that is sometimes comparable to the Atlantic Slinger, but when you buff a unit that's super cheap, it can have like a disproportionate effect because you have so much of this buff going on, and
this is H4 though.
And I think this is why the devs were terrified to put it in H3. Like, what if you have, and it can be really easy to do, like a 40 or 50 Slinger Mass, because you do have 2 cards for them in H2. So you're already like right there, 17 Automaton Slinger. And it's like massing them is super hard because they're super cheap. And suddenly your 50 Slinger Mass just get a plus 15% with a combat card in H3, enabling you to do maybe a disgusting mass effect. So maybe they were like, let's just be safe. Going industrial with Aztec requires at least a bit of time and time, for your opponent to scout or do something about it. Maybe, I don't know, it's Cav or Fast Fortress into 2 Falks.
You have the infinite 20 mace or 20 Automaton Slinger card that is pretty nice for a potential fast industrial, which already existed before, but I guess it pairs well with this Slinger card or improvement card.
Indeed. Something
I
else.
think that's a pretty good. I was gonna say. I think that basically it summarizes. I think if you're Aztecs, you're forced to use units that were subpar with slight buffs, and your mainline unit did get nerfed, or your mainline strategy often did get nerfed. But I think the Civ identity is still relatively the same. It's just your H2 boom has definitely been constricted, forcing you to Warrior Priest boom if you're going to do an extended H2, or I think try to FF and get out, or a very basically all-in rush. I think those are kind of the 3 opening options right now for Aztecs. So, there's these little changes here and there that may be more prevalent in teams or treaty, but I think the fundamental core design of the Civ didn't really change that much. They just lost an option to boom in H3 or to really go naked and rely on those Minutemen to defend versus early pressure if they wanted to do an FF or an FI.
Mm-hmm.
I want to point out one last thing about Aztec is that this change that they did to the Warrior Priests that with the card, with the H1 card, also really constitutes a buff to the attack dance, and that's an interesting thing, I think.
All right. There's also another not really documented but documented change is that fencing school does apply to shock infantry. So it will increase the ability of Aztec to make Coyote runners.
She says it, yes.
Not that it really matters in a way, because Aztec didn't have that much trouble with the fertility dance in the first place to make like a shit ton of units. But if you have fencing school, this will now affect coyote runs, and you should be seeing a noticeable change.
And that might be another treaty or team game, change that is pretty big for the Civ.
It's good for
The Civ is
3D.
not.
It's
Yeah,
good. Yeah.
it's my understanding that the Civ is not super highly regarded in either mode. So this is, I think, a step in the right direction. And we'll see this a lot with the Civs going through this list here. You're going to see a lot of the aim, I think, more options and kind of blunting the really go-to strategies for everybody. So I think with that, just for, like I said, the sake of time and brevity,
Yep.
we should move on to the Brits, unless there's
Yes.
anything else for Aztecs.
2 last quick things, just to inform our viewers. This card was previously 1,000 coin. It's now 1,300 coin. And with the boost of the community worker weight, so priests are now 2.4 villagers instead of 2. You can actually get this card super often in late game and have a really strong coin income. So watch out for this combination in late game. And of course, one last detail is that the Aztec Rush hasn't been changed whatsoever. So keep in mind that the Aztec player can still destroy you at 6 minutes on the clock. Maybe you want to add something to it, but I want to add that quick bit before we move on.
No, I think we can go on to Brits. Just one thought that this change to the 1300 to the coin crates is also really crucial for 3D, as the Aztec used to kind of struggle with the coin inco.
Yes, so
okay,
I'm going to switch to the patch now. For our viewers.
Let's see get a bit of a refresher there.
So
thin red line, big buff.
And now rockets inflicting a lot of damage. And actually we saw rockets in the 2v2 tournaments and how strong this buff was. We saw like plus 10 and plus 15 fly like crazy at each rocket shot, so it actually matters.
Yeah. And a little nerf to the longbow.
Yeah, very very slight. Long walls and longbows is a time honored and honestly a pretty boring. If you're the opponent of a Brit, no offense to Brit mains, but it's just so freaking boring to play against a Brit player who just walls off in the corner and just basically puts his build in the oven and waits 10 minutes to have 60 villagers and right click your base with 50 musketeers. And I think this is the first step to try to address that. Now Brits also lost some options, gained some options in this patch, but the Brits are still going to do the same thing. Your openings are the same, your decks are basically the same. There was a lot of changes with, like I said, thin red line no longer being a meme, thanks to the speed only being 10%, so your musketeers aren't worse towers in essence, and they added in some of the new European, right? Well, and they added in some new cards for their mercenary options while getting rid of whale oil and replacing it with team whale oil to kind of weaken the Brit water, because again, Brit has no problem booming. Brit is still a very strong Civ, but I can honestly tell you that if you were playing Brits before this patch, maybe a card or two is different, but the Civ is basically the same, with the added bonus of your 2 infinite rockets are probably a must-have, given how much these things just shred in Age 4.
So about that, thin red line can also be compensated now with advanced arsenal, which was not the case before. Yes. So you can still have decently fast moving units without any problem.
And I think didn't Brits get something with drummers as well? Because
yes, so we'll go over the card, but they got a whole new load of mercenary cards, including
here it is.
Some of the strongest cards like giant grenadiers.
Oh no. Well, it's
Um,
H4, but still, yeah.
and
I know we had this very fun Cherokee card that was replaced by a can, which at first still sent Cherokee regardless of the name.
yes, but now it's
Which they
fixed.
fixed now, but that was pretty funny.
So yeah, how about that? What do you think about the death of the Cherokee allies?
Who really sent it that often? It didn't, these, unlike a lot of the newer DE stuff, I don't believe they shadow teched, or maybe they did. Did they shadow tech
So it gives
the
you
Cherokee?
veterancy, and the infinite card gives you champion.
Yeah.
And now you have a con. I would assume that this is a treaty change for the most part, because I know, natives are a very important part of treaty.
Or team game, maybe.
Yeah, I mean, let's be honest here. Brits
This
don't need a lot of help in any of these
this one
departments.
isn't infinite though, so it's not that much for 3.
Correct. Um,
They
True.
still have the 13 Cherokees. They did not touch that card.
Yeah, and they have 11 giant grenadiers. I think these are just flavor, and I don't think that's a bad thing. Again, Brits are very solid civ. Um, all of these new allies, I don't know how they stand up, the meta, and we'll see in the test of time. But you have a lot more options, a lot more interesting, unique to Britain options, such as like the Hanover allies and the Totenkopf Hussar. So I think it's a good change because it adds more identity to the civ. As for balance, I'm not quite sure if it's a plus or minus. Again, if you're Brits, your boom is untouched, your musketeers are untouched, your hussar are untouched, your walls and longbows are basically untouched. I think it's business as usual for the Brits.
Oh, the longbow's got a very small nerf, but yes. I really like the idea of that drummer's card. I'm not sure how good it is, but I just really like the idea. It's pretty cool.
It is, and you'll see that a lot throughout this patch. Is that there's stuff that is flavorful, but I'm not seeing it at all in meta because at a certain level, especially at the higher levels, it's about efficiency, and everything is costed very specifically in a deck. And so for most of us, these are fun things to add in a casual game, but you're not likely to always see these. Maybe the Jat Lancer card, but that's about it. Actually, should we give Pete's in the chat? Pete's a British main. Should we let Pete say
No,
something
He's
for
sure.
a
here,
second?
yeah. Let him come
I don't
in,
know if he's
of
here.
course.
Oh, he's here. Let me 1 second, Pete. All right, you should be free to go, bud. Wait, sorry. Okay, unmute yourself now. There you go.
There we go. Access. I think they recently took a range off the longbows because longbows feel a little bit weaker
They-
now. But
They took 1 damage.
when damage, okay.
Yeah, so it's like roughly 7%, maybe less damage reduction, which is probably bigger in team games and stuff when you have a bigger mass of longbows. But I mean, it's still a longbow. In fact, we'll get to it. They nerfed the range on other units, so the longbow really should be the king of Age 2 light infantry.
They're you can't kite with them though. It's kind of like if you're standing and fighting, they're fantastic. But if it's kind of a mobile game, they're kind of rough.
Yeah,
Mhm.
that's why
And
walls exist.
to be fair, this is why the longbowman should be the king of range, because you pay a hefty price for it. You just can't kite with them.
No, they're
And
pretty squishy too.
when you look at that, like, this is 16 damage, but it's at twice the normal speed of a skirmisher, for example, and skirmishers have 15 base damage. So not only do you still have 1 more damage, but you have twice the attack speed. So in terms of raw DPS, a longbowman is actually better than an imperial skirmishers in a light infantry war. Of course, when you factor in the multiplier, they don't benefit from counter infantry rifling, so it gets rough. But this is to give general perspective to the viewer. It's in terms of raw DPS, the longbowman is an insane unit.
Exactly.
Counter infantry rifling doesn't like impact your attack on other skirms, right?
No, just heavy infantry.
Yeah, so it takes your damage multiplier from 2 to 3. Is that what it does?
Exactly.
Correct.
Yeah.
Or it really adds a ×1 because now we.
But
have
it doesn't
also-
work for longbow anyway.
No,
so
no, it doesn't.
you would have to get your rangers for that.
The only time it
It's
works
really,
on...
it's really,
Go ahead.
it's really tempting to have that Age 4 Rangers card in there for British, I have to say, because I think British goons are like some of the best in the game because you can triple card them, and I don't know, you could like go into Age 4 and then do skirm goon with Brits, and I bet it would be really strong, but it's kind of tough to like get there. Usually the games are decided before that point, and it's like, I don't know, would you rather have the infinite rockets in there or your, the Ranger card?
So thanks for this wonderful transition, Pete, because we did not talk about Rogers Rangers and Queen's Rangers, which is available, with the Glorious Revolution, which is the card for Brits.
Church card.
And it's weird because the patch notes says...
Well, it's a church card.
The patch notes says that the technology now also replaces the longbow training, and I think it's a problem of the patch note.
No, it's the technology from the church card. So you send the church card, and then you can research this technology.
Yeah.
Wait, it says you can train the Rangers with the church card, or it says you can
say
train.
So. Do you want me to start a game real quick so we can test that out? Yeah.
Holy crap! Really? Wow, that's actually pretty cool.
Because
and they get all of the upgrades that the longbowmen do, so they become, I believe, the longest range skirms or the second one. But their stats are very basic because your combat cards don't really affect them.
Make it a deathmatch, or just turn cheese on, whatever.
Yeah, just WSD.
Starting commerce age with infinite resources on fast speed. So good to go.
Infinite resources is a thing. I just discovered this. That's pretty crazy.
Oh yeah, that's like the best way to get most of the challenges done.
You can use it, to speedrun challenges. I unlocked America so fast.
I see.
And you just send this. I could go for, speeds always win, but you can also do this.
It's no Vandorian.
Oh.
Okay. That just increases the speed of researching stuff.
Close batch. So let me just add this one real quick. So I have access to Fingered Line and Rogers Rangers. I have access to these guys.
Rogers Rangers gives you 5 skirms for 800 food. It's not that bad, I don't think. And in H2.
And so when I go in H4, let me just build.
Wait, there's another one?
Wait,
I kinda put it in extreme mode.
Wait, I thought you were testing whether you could build Rogers Rangers in H2.
With the H4 card, with the church card in H2, and I'm sorry for the viewer, you can actually build the veteran rangers now.
Is that in H3 or H4 though?
It's in H4.
H4.
It's on the H4. And now, I don't know what happens if I send the rangers, actually.
What do you even need that card for now?
I don't know, and that's an excellent question. Because they say, what? They say you upgrade longbowmen, but this is just plain wrong. Oh, I have guard rangers? Alright.
That is pretty cool.
So you don't really need the church card anymore, but it comes at a pretty hefty price. We are talking 2,000 coin, but if you want to,
what costs 2,000 coin?
So it ships a lot of rangers and allows you to transform your longbowmen into rangers. The church card gives you two rangers techs the H2 part and the H4 part for 2,000 coin that chips rangers and allows you to now train rangers instead of longhools. You don't even need the ranger's card anymore.
You have to spend 2,000 coin to get to it, though.
Yeah. So if you want it for free,
but you need the advanced church card, though, right?
yeah. So if you want like just one card to get, a lot of rangers and thin red line and the Highlanders, you also get the ranger card, the ranger's card effect for free. But if you want just the ranger, you can just have the ranger card in H4 and free up with it what is a very precious spot in the H2 home city deck. Because most of the Brit deck, I guess I'm not that much of a Brit player, but most of
H2
the
is
Brit
usually full.
deck is often full because there's so much good upgrade card, and you need the wood, and you need everything else.
I'd get rid of the infantry training thing there. Put like
Good call.
600 gold in there. Get it 600 gold in there or something.
So that was pretty much.
Yeah, I think that kind of covers it for Britain, except if Pete, you want to add something.
So I kind of thought.
On Brit?
So yeah, basically we have this whole ability to change the ranger's part with the church card, and or you can just ship rangers. The patch note was not exactly precise, but you can now have. But it was actually true. You lose guard pikemen and imperial pikemen, which is they shouldn't have got for free in the first place. I think this was a bug, and this pretty much sums it up. You can also get 6 drummers in 2H5, but I think we pretty much saw everything for Brits. Do you think it really changed anything for Brits?
No, not really.
All right.
I think the standard play is kind of unchanged for them. It gives you some kind of fun quirks to do, I guess.
All right.
Yeah.
I wish there was just an easier path to do rangers, like 2,000 gold. That's, I don't know, that's so expensive that you have to stack that up just 1,000 gold or something.
You can always send the H4 card. The H4 card is still free. You still get access to rangers. So Chinese didn't get that much. The Kiang pikeman now follows the same stuff that all pikemen have, which is upgrade gives you more attack range, which is good considering they use like a 10-foot pole to attack, so they should get a bit of range.
Yeah, I love that change.
That actually changed quite a bit the dynamic of the pikemen, because now I think, if I remember correctly, when they are guard, 2 rows of pikemen can attack at the same time. So if you catch cavalry, you can do much more damage before they run away.
Yeah.
But I mean, this is not really a Chinese specific change. We have go ahead.
No, yeah, it's just a general change for Pike. So for China, really a little buff, but that's basically it. The one thing is that China does use Pikes more than most civs, so I guess that's good for them.
Yeah, this is just nice quality of life, I think, for China, and really any civ, is because a musk husk right situation. Oh yeah, no problem, Pete. You can have the enemy hussar dance really close, right, and drive skirms off a bit easier if you're good at pull tricking, especially if you're doing like an old Han, which is still a popular path for China, not as popular as it was before, I believe, mainly in teams. Anyways, it's one of those subtle differences. Clearly China, the devs feel, is in a good spot. Many people would probably scoff at that. But the reality is simply, it just gives them more options. It gives China a little bit more microplay, and it's a little bit harder to bully them around with the Musk-Huss formation, because now those pikes are just that much better at snaring.
Yeah, and they
Any,
don't bump around that much.
anything you want to add, Platt, as your resident Chinese main?
I would say with China, the fire junk change is kind of a bummer. I don't think it was that popular, but it was certainly a hilarious option. This does make China have to commit a bit more to water. China wasn't really the strongest, although it's not useless on water. You know, I would say before this patch, China was definitely an A+ kind of civ. I think they left the civ mainly alone because now many other civs have these huge shipments and these huge options, and so I feel like the devs are on a wait and see moment. From my experiences playing China, this doesn't make me go old Han banner in situations I wouldn't before. The civ is basically the same good old China. So
All right.
I think that sums it up.
Dutch. Bit of change for Dutch. Remove 50 food for the starting crates. And mainly the reverted XP build for banks, which I think is huge for them.
That's huge.
It is. It's huge. It's subtle, but it's massive.
Like 280 XP, like plus one, even the plus 140 XP, like the bank wagons give you so much more resources now directly. You almost have another shipment. This is really good. The envoy now to balance it out, because like deals less damage to heroes and villagers, because I guess envoy rushing was a thing. I don't know, maybe.
It's just obnoxious. Something I'll reiterate with a lot of these changes, and maybe when we do the part 2, I'll talk about, in my opinion, and I think the devs would probably agree, at least in this category, what's a negative player experience. Things can be OP, but they don't feel as bad. And things cannot necessarily be OP, but they're just an absolute gut punch that it makes you not want to play the game again. And being envoy rushed, like, it just sucked. I've never been beaten by it, but especially if you're a newer player or you lack the APM.
Like to kill the hero with the envoy while people are snare, while the other hero is snaring.
Right, or just have your vills path around and have the micro to keep your economy not idled too much because of this. It was just a flex, and it's like, it was funny to do if you're the guy doing it. And I don't think it was very enjoyable for a lot of other people. I guess it's almost like a bully card, so to speak, which I know is such a meme and overused. But this was not a card that people were taking because they wanted to have like a semi-serious game. This was like a flex or a meme card, and it just, because the envoys got affected by the villager upgrades at the market a couple patches ago. So this, I think, is just trying to let the envoy still have a use because they're a bit tankier now and can do a bit more damage to like treasure guardians and stuff, while not just being obnoxious. Yep, exactly. So really one of those kind of minor things that I think, again, the devs are trying to bring more strategy out and kind of deal with what they would call, quote, laming.
So speaking of laming, we got really interesting stuff. Also, new path opened for Dutch with the Piece of Monster, which allows envoy to build unit production buildings. I would say specifically behind your base. So this is really, I think it's meme, but it's definitely powerful if you don't see it coming, I guess.
Well, think about treaty when Dutch already, all their villagers need to be working economically, right? This frees up they're already limited number of villagers. This allows them to continue working on economy while their envoys build forward bases.
Yeah,
I
why
think
not?
that's the intention. I'm not, a treaty guy. I would watch Jaegershare. I'm sorry if I'm mispronouncing that, but he would be the guy to go to, whether if it's a treaty card or not. But yeah, this is like an option or a treaty card. I don't think I've not seen this in a serious 1v1 deck.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I agree, definitely.
Um,
I also want to point out, as being Dutch myself, I really like the new visuals of the villagers. I think it looks very Dutch. I like it. Well done.
It did. It added a lot of flavor. Again, flavor. Looking through the rest of the cards, the two changes that I see are the Brigadiers and the Bosniaks in 1v1s. Other than that, Dutch seems basically the same, just a bit more powerful because of the bank XP. So the bank boom is rewarded faster. The revolutions haven't really seen. 17 provinces is not a very good card, I think, in supremacy, unless you're doing some sort of overpop. The House of Nassau, we've done a lot of experimenting, and maybe you'll see a day where us or somebody smarter than us comes out with a way to use that card advantageously. But for now, it's
the idea is we need to cover one thing about that, but the idea is that this House of Nassau card is nice with certain other civs, which you might think of Italy, but one particular civ attracted our attention, and that was the USA, because USA got a change. We'll see that later, but where Hamiltonian economics basically retroactively refunds your market, refunds your market tax, but it also does so if you got them for free, so you still get the costs. For example, if you get hunting dogs for free from this House of Nassau card, and then you send Hamiltonian economics, you still get 50 coin, 50 wood, so you'll actually get some free resource. That's pretty fun.
It is. I mean, the question, of course, remains: is it worth giving up 3 villagers and then having a shipment ready to ship 700 wood in a bank back to back? Definitely not, of course, in 1v1, and even in teams. I have not seen. I've seen people kind of use this, but not in any competitive games that I've served.
I would see it in, especially paired with, for example, an African civ that gets an extra livestock market. Things like that.
But for now, I'm just not seeing it. So I'm not saying it's not. I think the math needs to be run. I don't think people have really figured out a use for it yet. So I think if you're a Dutch main, I encourage you to look into this and experiment with it. I think it's great, and finding new ways in the meta, especially team meta, as Dutch are kind of a static team civ, very powerful but very linear in how they play. So I think I would encourage people to go. But from now, my gut instinct is you still got to get up and moving, and it doesn't help your civ. It doesn't help the Dutch get up and moving, and they already have a slow start. So I would just say moving on. They also got a bunch of new mercenaries, which does help them in that 1v1, because again, they don't have musketeers, but Irish Brigadiers in H2, amazing card for Dutch because it kind of covers that weakness. Dutch Handcav is very solid, often underutilized, and now they have 6 Bosniaks, so they can kind of do their version of a Spahi or Mamluk push in H3.
I would rather call it I would rather compare them to Stradiuts than to Spahi or Mamluks, but yes.
I mean, but these are cards that people use
and don't forget that Dutch can already get Stradiuts, so they can actually pair these up if you get a lot of coin, of course. But
correct, and Bosniaks are definitely an overperforming card. I would definitely say res to res, stat to stat. There's just no denying the fact that a Bosniak is a cracked out Chinako that promotes, and you get 6 of them compared to 4 Mamluks and I believe 5 Stradiuts.
Oh, you can have a more direct comparison. I think with Italy, you get 3 of these guys. I think plus 4 Stradiuts, for 500 of each resource. And this is supposed to be, Italy's strong suit these company cards. So 6 Bosniak is really strong because I would go out on a limb and say Bosniak are stronger than Stradians.
I would say so, especially with promotions. If you know how to like abuse it versus treasure guardians or get a few early kills, it can snowball. Um, just my opinion. Again, I'm not qualified to necessarily make it, but I feel like off the top of my head, this card overperforms. But I've also been bottoing with it.
They
So
feel
that
they
may
feel pre- they feel pre- they feel pretty nice, and
Yeah.
the Brigadiers thing is huge for Dutch and H2. Like it really fills a hole in their lineup, so to speak, when you're getting press. I've used them with a lot of success in a couple of 1v1s here recently.
And it's not like the gold cost is much of a problem for Dutch anyway.
Oh yes.
Yeah, to be honest, it was a bit strange because again, they were adding a lot of flavor. If someone in the comments is aware of like some sort of Dutch connection to the Balkans, um, it I felt like Bosniaks were just very popular this patch, and you'll see them all over the place. That is one meta change you will see in a lot of decks is Bosniaks.
Mhm.
They also have the 7 mounted riflemen, which I believe the mounted riflemen got a nerf. Still a very strong, basically a ranged lancer, for lack of a better term, with a goon unit type. They also have native unit cards for 9 Habsburg allies. They just got a lot. Dutch got a lot of options, and we know Dutch have no problem with coins, so Dutch could probably do a bit of a merc build. I think this is a really cool idea. It adds a lot to the Civ, but in 1v1s, you're probably only going to see the two. The Brigadiers and Bosniaks for now, and it did not change. The revolutions are fun, but nobody that I'm aware of has really found out a way to make it viable. So I think basically it's the same old Dutch.
Can still come. Sometimes build come way after a card, like months after a card is introduced. That's what happened with Inca.
That's
To
true.
be fair, the halberdiers from Dutch can get a huge speed boost through the Age 1 card, which is military reforms. If I go quickly to Dutch, you can have this H1, I think it's H1, yes, military reform, giving you plus 20% speed at the cost of doing less damage to all infantry. And if you combine it with maybe a revolution, you could do a surprisingly strong timing. Now, is it worth destroying a lot of your economy? Maybe, maybe not. Also consider that it's not an actual revolution. You can still train villagers, and since you have banks, you can reboom off of it. So it could work. I guess it was intended to, but we don't have really much of a deck for now.
I think this one needs some more people trying it out and finding builds with it.
All right, who do we
Did
got?
you want to have? Did you want to add anything else before I move on to another Civ?
I would say, like in summary, there's a lot of options. Your 1v1 deck, if you're Dutch, is probably mostly unchanged other than the 2 merc cards. And we encourage you to try around. Like I said, I am less creative member of the server. I'm a pretty tried and true type of player, and I look at a lot of these cards that the Dutch have, and other than the mercs, I'm just kind of like, there's no reason for me to change a basic Dutch build. And the few times I've seen people try to use these things against me, to be fair, I was Botto, which I think is also pretty overtuned. It just slapped him down really fast. So I would encourage all of you, though, to prove me wrong. I look forward to being wrong. That's the great thing about being a pessimist, right? You're either pleasantly surprised or correct. But I think there could be some legs for it. There's just, if you're Dutch, business is normal with some flavor.
Also, Dutch painting, we didn't talk about it, but it's mainly, I think, treaty oriented. It could really boost Dutch treaty, I guess, because a lot of wholesale cards are often used in treaty, but I am in no position to discuss about treaty.
Yeah.
So next on the list is Ethiopia. Um, Ethiopia got a sizable change with the Oromo Warrior being
You know, I,
completely reworked.
can we
But
do?
also,
I'm sorry
yeah,
to just kind of
Mhm.
throw a wrench in the spanner, so to speak, but no, Sir Shark Dad is here. I was going to suggest, so that way I can kind of tag out, is if we could go over ports really fast, just
No
because that is kind of like
problem.
my favorite Civ. I've played ports a long time. I played them before it was cool. You FOMO people out there, I say it jokingly, but also I'm looking at you. Um, flavor of the month type of people. Portugal has always been a low key strong Civ with just a lot of difficult matchups. This patch has done wonders for ports, and arguably, you know, talking about delicate balance, put a Civ that was probably a niche Civ on the ladder that really struggled into random matchups and maps into a undisputed S tier Civ. The short of it is that the cards that they added, they fixed the organ gun. So now the organ gun is kind of a midpoint between a cheaper falconet and a Gatling gun. They added a card, which in teams might be worthwhile, K-Shot. The new Constable card, so they switched Hussar out of Goon combat, and they added one for all melee. So like Dutch typically struggle with siege. Now their halberdiers can get a 15-15 buff. Uh, I think this is incredible for Portugal. They also add spy attack. They make it 15, 24 in stand guard mode. Um, this can really help against like merc builds. Again, Portugal already has a lot of options. This adds more. They get the 8-hand cannoneers in age 2. I also get 8 Trabants, which I have not figured out the exact scenario that I would probably use Trabants for, but it's an option. They did take away Mamluks, and this is huge. Portugal used to really need those Mamluks to regain map control, or like a super heavy cav unit to snare and slow people down, even raid. It's kind of an interesting switch up, but of course the elephant in the room is the Fatoria card, which is effectively turns all of your TCs into about 2 villagers worth of trickles. It, it doesn't sound like much, but when you realize that Portugal gets a TC, of course, every age up, by age 3, you're effectively 6 villagers shipment out of 1 card, plus the fact that can now produce off 3 TCs. If you with some good food treasures, you can get into age 3 sub 7 minutes with Portugal. This has allowed the naked fast fortress from ports to be almost unpunishable. Again, I don't want to claim the meta is settled, but from the highest tier to around 1,000 elo right now, ports are absolutely overperforming. This card I would expect to be changed. It, put simply, is probably the best age 1 card in the game. Do ports, it's a delicate balance for the Civ. Too little, the card won't be worth anything. Too much, and you have a boom Civ that can take off too easily. That said, with that aside, I really like the changes. 3 organ guns for 200 coin feels pretty fair. Finally gives ports some, teeth against like an age 2 rush. It the mercenary changes, even though I miss my Mamluks. And the thick boys, the shooty boys, pistoliers they're fun. And the Civ also got like Estomos field guns. That's a really cool card. They got in age 4, they got some other natives. They have a different age up. It's just cool. I really want to give even the Shotel Warrior age up, which is kind of a weaker age up option for going to age 3 compared to 6 Castador. It's cool. And Portugal has been complained for a long time as this like vanilla boring Civ, which while I would disagree with, I do see detractors' points that why would I play Portugal? It doesn't really have an identity. All it does is spam town centers and
Goons.
kind of and goons, which every European Civ has access to more or less. So this helps really give some identity, whether it's the spies that will absolutely shred all these new super merc builds. They also got bestieros, got a
Oh, you're
major overhaul.
right.
along with their pikes. But to be honest, again, with the changes to halberdiers and the fact that bestiaros, why they promote promotion on a crossbow unit that base stats are pretty weak. Maybe it's a treaty thing. Maybe it's like a 4v4, 3v3 thing. I don't think it really fundamentally changed the Civ. It's an interesting option to go, age up with the guard. Is it Papal Guard or Papal?
Yeah, I
Whatever.
think it's
The age
Papal
up,
God.
right? The one that gives the free guard upgrades because
And enables
bestiaros
it.
are a
Yeah.
guard crossbow. Yes, and they also have a quicker train time, so you can have instant pops of pikes and these crossbows. The pikes get affected by the new constable card as well, so it's there's options for Portugal. There's more identity for Portugal. For the most part, basically the same Civ. So I think this is a great job of the devs trying to get more options for a Civ, more identity for a Civ. The Vitoria card probably needs to be rebalanced, but
Yeah, I
really
just want
happy.
to point out that we have Civ like Italy and Russia, India that really rely on a trickle card in H1, and when you compare those trickle cards to Vitorias, it's just not fair.
Yeah, it isn't. And obviously there's asymmetry in Civ, so what's fair or not fair is going to be kind of a subjective measure. But I think we can all agree that Feitoria took a Civ that was like, I mean, again, a lot of players chat on Portugal, and I think they really just didn't like it because Portugal required a lot more micro and a lot more thinking ahead and a lot more understanding of maps and matchups than Civs like my somewhat derided Ottomans, but and understandably so. Truly, the identity has been fleshed out a good deal, and this is a Civ that for years has always kind of been considered a afterthought of a Civ. So I want to really, give the devs kudos when they deserve it, and that's giving Portugal a lot more clear identity with its units, with how its playstyle is, and making it not just a Civ that gets free TCs. So
Yeah, they gave them a whole lot of love to make an AoE II reference.
they did. So I'm gonna tap out, but I know Sir Shark Dad is here, and maybe when I get back from my thing, Sir Shark Dad and I can go over like the part 2 if he's still able to, and if not, we'll just schedule it for like tomorrow or something. But
That would be really nice. I sadly have to go as well. It's really late over here. But yeah, really nice going over these tips already. I'm very curious to find out what you guys say about the rest.
yeah, and also too, before I go, I see there's a few people in our chat. Please give your thoughts on stuff too, and we'll make sure to read it as we continue this kind of roundtable discussion. And again, this is not top players. We're just normal meta victims and players, and these are just what we've been seeing in our initial thoughts, not necessarily balance or builds out of it, but just thoughts on the patch. So, all right, see you guys in a little bit. Thank you for your time.
Thanks for your input, Vlad. And thanks for your input, please. Can you hear me, Sir Shagdad?
Yeah, I'm here. So for people who are familiar with the Age of Bison YouTube channel, you probably recognize my voice. I've kind of been a primary caster on a lot of the tournament games. I do actually play this game every once in a while. I'm a little late to this, but I'm here to kind of continue the discussion. So what civs have we kind of talked about?
We've done Aztec up to Dutch, and we jumped to Portuguese so that Platt could give his 2 cents about the Civ, because he played them much more than I guess all of us combined.
Yeah.
So we did like the 4 and Portuguese, and I think now we're going to jump into Ethiopians.
Okay. Yeah, because the only thing, I agreed with all the previous points. in regards to Dutch, not much has really changed. You would expect perhaps maybe different varying forms of gameplay, but really the biggest change was the XP change for the banks. And so you're back to the standard open, and I think it's more about the general meta changes in the game that are probably going to change Dutch the most. I think that we're going to be moving away from a Reiter meta into a Halb meta. I think Logistician Start's going to have some viability going forward. Perhaps Skirm Halb is kind of the way that I would play Dutch. And actually, that's been inspired by you, Dunamai, with your famous 1v1 game into Aztecs against Vindian. And just the military reforms card just still has legs, and I think the
Quite
issue is
literally
that
so.
yeah, quite literally, very fast, and I just think that in general, moving towards a more aggressive meta, away from the FI that we were experiencing before, Dutch is going to struggle, and so they need to learn how to play H2. And unfortunately, this patch doesn't really give the Dutch like H2 options. You would think like, oh, I have Irish Brigadiers, but it's only 9 of them, and they're they can go down pretty quick. So I think Halbs is probably the way to go. So I'm interested to see that. So I agree with all that. And then in regards to the Portuguese, the only thing I have to say is that, right, like you said, the elephant in the room is Victorious. So in that case, what you're seeing is that a Civ that already excels at turtling, right? It's hard to punish if you play it well, now has the ability to boom even more. So it's like the curb, like the margin of error has decreased, right? So, you can already produce multiple vills out of those TCs. You already have high health TCs for free. And then you add this trickle. It's kind of like in H1, no less, right? And the job is just that much easier. Now, I agree, Portugal needed help for sure. But what do you exactly what do you do? And when you're in that kind of situation, and I do think they're overperforming. So I'm wondering exactly how they're going to approach it, if they're going to approach it at all. You never know. So anyway, we can continue now.
So on to Ethiopia now. Ethiopia got a rework of the Oromo Warrior, which was intended to be like the Hackapelit, a ranged heavy cav.
Right.
This identity has been like 90% removed. It's now a charged musket attack. So the way it happens is you attack move, for example, with your Oromo warriors, they shoot once, and then there are like 3 population, very strong mix between a Hussar and a Ulam. They have huge hand attack. It's 34, but with 1 attack speed. So by the time the enemy does 2 swing, you do 3. So you actually have 50% more damage than what is displayed on the card, which makes at around, if I calculate correctly, a 51 hand attack. But this is 3 pop. This is 120 food and 120 coin, so it's a really expensive unit. But it does give a heavy cav option for Ethiopia, something that was sorely lacking, because your main cav, quote unquote, unit was the Shotel Warrior that was available in H2, which is a shock infantry unit. This is the main part of the rework. Something that has not been true in this patch is that this is actually the opposite. Abun can now heal multiple units. I think this is a bug. You can get 2 Abun to heal a unit at any given time if you select all of your Abuns and click on a unit that is not being healed, you can have multiple Avens healing, and it will work. So it can pair very well, for example, with your new Oromo Warrior, which is super expensive and that you don't want to lose. But other than that, not much going on for Ethiopia. Also, you cannot get influence until Stagecoach is researched, which is, it's very funny because we were talking about it in Age of Bison, and we were like, well, influence is like one-to-one comparable to coin. So why do the African civ get to, get resources while Stagecoach is not researched? So I'm glad this was introduced because I think it um, deactivates some of the early timings you could get with native units when you allied with, for example, Somalis or Sudanese, especially with a dervish. So it's really nice to see this was fixed. And the Oromo Warrior, really, I think it will play more than, I would say, standard Civ in a sense, now that you can flank and attack with a heavy cav unit.
Does
And
anybody play this Civ?
I do, actually. I do
You play
this.
Ethiopia? I don't think anybody plays Ethiopia. And I think perhaps it's because Hausa have been such a clear, just I think that much stronger than Ethiopia, and perhaps maybe they did not distinguish between the two civs enough when it came to design. I always thought that, like, at least in my interactions with the civs, that Ethiopia seemed to me more of the fast fortress kind of civ, whereas the Hausa was more the free elo kind of civ. I joke, but I was kind of like, if you scroll down a little bit more, I felt like I was kind of underwhelmed by the amount of changes with Ethiopia, just because I felt like they needed a little bit more to distinguish themselves from the pack. I felt like they needed a little bit more help in terms of performance.
Mm-hmm.
I just don't feel like the community has really developed much in terms of, I don't know, build, like, not a lot of build order, not a lot of gameplay that surrounds Ethiopia. You see a lot of stuff with, like, pretty much anything else.
So about that, it's really interesting because I feel like Ethiopia is a ticking time bomb. There is a build waiting to happen. Like, there was, this huge, it was popularized by Chinese players, so I won't dare to pronounce their name because I'm going to butcher them. Um, on the forums, saying like stuff like the Sudanese early rush, sending the big Benny that was previously worth instantly 900 food that you could sell in the livestock market, gave you gigantic amount of wood, which you could in turn turn into Gascanias, and then you would ship pretty much your whole unit roster in H2, like Sudanese Dervish, Showtail Warriors, your Gascanias, and keep making Gascanias like there's no tomorrow. And at, like, I think it was 7 minutes, if I remember correctly, you had like a gigantic wave, truly gigantic, of more than 40 units. Just, this tidal wave crushing on your opponent town center, and there was nothing people could do about it. So with this card being nerfed, we could, have this, make sure this goes away, maybe, hopefully. But I think behind this, like, a bit strong and, let's admit it, kind of lame rush, there's another build behind waiting to happen. Something super strong, because, as you say, there's not a lot of work, at least on the Age of Sunbrose Discord, about Ethiopia, and I don't think the community has worked that much on Ethiopia. I think there's a build waiting to happen. I think this is a ticking time bomb.
You're probably right. I think a lot of people probably avoided game is difficult enough, and then you add the mountain monastery mechanic and livestock market and things like that. So maybe people weren't thinking the juice wasn't worth the squeeze, as it were. We have a member of our chat in this live stream saying nobody plays Ethiopia, talking about treaty specifically, it's usually banned in games just because it's too strong in treaty. And so, I think maybe that speaks to late game strength, I think. And I know a lot of people. I do not play treaty. I think I'm not
I
gonna
don't
I'm not
either.
gonna comment about I'm not gonna comment about treaty. I do not play treaty at all. That's out of personal preference, and but I know that the treaty community is pretty large. A lot of people like to play treaty and avoid the rush mechanics of the game. So maybe that's why a lot of people aren't playing Ethiopia. But you're right. I think perhaps there's quite a lot out there, and we just kind of need to get into it and uncover it.
And to be fair to treaty players, some of it is available in skirmish too. Like Ethiopia can have 99 villages plus their Aben gathering on mountain monasteries. You can make mountain monasteries have 1,000 coin in them natively without needing a coin mine. So you can essentially build coin mines with Ethiopia. Granted, it's 150 wood to get a 1,000 gold coin mine, so it's not that good, but you can still do it. And if you do it by increasing the build limit of Abens with the Abens card, you can easily get, I think it's 13 villagers that gather at like 50% more than a normal villager, if I remember correctly. So you can have like a 120 villager equivalent economy, which I guess for treaty is absolutely bonkers.
Yeah.
But
anything else to say on?
I think be careful about this Civ. Something's going to happen with this Civ. I feel it.
Okay. All right. Cool.
Let's go to French. Oh, and we have our resident French main here.
Oh, do we have? Is France
There's
next?
you.
Oh,
Yes.
I have a lot to say about France. I don't think we have enough time.
I know.
For me to talk about France. Oh, France.
First, let's go
again
on the CDB. The 1 second less on CDB. What do you think about?
Yeah, it's a huge win. I think for French mains. I think prior to patch, France was a struggle. Just because I think that, and again, this is mid elo talking, so I'm not gonna talk about people on extreme ranges here. So when it comes to France, it was always, in order to produce, I felt like in order to produce the same kind of impact and effect in a game, in a 1v1 scenario, let's say, you just needed to put that much more skill in micro, and that I felt like other civs were getting for free or part of the mechanic. They could do everything, but just the amount of effort that it required in order to, produce the desired effect, as opposed to civs that just had it built in, is really, really frustrating. And the main appeal of France is the Cueil de Bois. So it's kind of like the ability to train them faster just helps in terms of your boom. It helps with all your timings. It feels a lot smoother, I would say. I think it's a good change.
So just a quick note on this. It seems like nothing, but with the fact that CDB are 25% stronger than normal villagers as a base gather rate, so even the improvement are 25% faster for CD, stronger for CDBs because of it, and the fact that it's trying now 1 second less, it means that if you have just one normal Civ building vills of the TC and one normal French building CDB, your economy grows up 12% faster than the other guy. Since this change, it was 7% before. So when you do the math about it, it's actually kind of a big change for France, even if it's just 1 second.
Yeah. And then I think Cold Napoleon adds to that pretty significantly. I think, it's basically, I think it's just an economic theory card, essentially. It's just 10%, right? So, it's one of those things I don't know how to feel about it, like in terms of the cost. But once you get your market upgrades in terms of wood gathering, I guess it doesn't really matter, and you'd rather just get the 10% throughout. But I personally don't look at it as like standard. Like you have to get in Edict of Nantes and get Code Napoleon, for the economic edge alongside economic theory. But I mean, maybe like in terms of like, I'm sure we can craft something where economic theory and then Edict of Nantes, and then you have Code Napoleon, and then you have a base 20% plus market upgrades, and then you just push your opponent with a potently strong H2 economy. I mean, can you imagine like you're stacking at that point over 20%, in addition to the fact that the CDB is already gathering so fast, like it really could be insane, I think.
I think exactly like you said, like it can open some possibilities, but 25% is still a steep price for economic theory, especially if the game runs to H4 and you have to switch to estates. You're gonna feel this 25%. That's guaranteed.
Yeah. The wood cost is going to be insane. So it's basically like a win now kind of button. Now the Grenadier play, I think that's interesting. I think it's a smart change in the sense of like it gives you reason once again to emphasize the unique church card. It gives you reason to send in the Grenadiers. I know there's an old Middle Guard FF play that existed back in Legacy, and I'm personally still writing the build on this, trying to get this to work. I think a timing attack is really big, and I think I said it multiple times. Yeah, I think the timing attack is going to be fantastic, and I also think that Grenadiers are going to be the new meta. I think Grenadiers in H2, H3 is going to be nice. I think that's where we need to be.
You would go as far as to say new meta.
New meta, my meta.
All right,
why not?
That's an interesting.
I just think that like when DE was released, like somebody along the line said, like probably Drongo or somebody was like, yeah, like Skirm Goon, done. We figured it out. Like just Skirm Goon all the time, and I'm like, man, like we need to change it up. And I feel like the devs are a lot of this patch and a lot of the previous patches were like, we've made so many unit models. Please use them. Like we have mercs and we have natives, like use them. And then everybody's like, no, because Aussie Drongo told me a couple of years ago to use Skirm Goon. And they're like, fine, we're going to buff all these units. So that way you have to use them.
To be fair, there's also something else that's really important, that you have this new feature in D, which is target lock. So when you still see a unit and you began your animation, your firing animation, but it moves out of range, some unit used to cancel the attack and just chase after the unit. With target lock, it's not the case anymore. You will perform your attack regardless of the range, as long as you see the unit. And now Grenadier have this feature, which means if, for example, you manage to catch a skirmisher that was being pull-tricked into a mass, and your whole army of 20 grenadiers fire on it, and by the time the grenade arrives, the pull-tricked skirmisher is in the mass, prepare to see some fireworks, because they're going to obliterate the whole rear guard of skirmishers.
Yeah,
so
absolutely.
That could also be something, it's subtle, but it can make a whole lot of difference.
As well as the survivability of Grenadiers now in melee allows for a lot more. I guess it's more forgiving in terms of micro. But the big, I mean, these are all huge. So many, I mean, they basically got a rework. Yeah, exactly. Like you're highlighting it. The long range infantry hit points, the emphasis on the musketeer is huge. I guess the elephant in the room in this case is, well, there's two. Is the promotable, right? The promotable musketeers.
Which is French Royal Army here.
And I mean, you've done the stats work on that, and I mean, that's just Um, that's just
Oh,
insane.
in H4 and from H4 onwards, if you manage somehow to promote your whole musketeer army, you will obliterate Brit musketeer 1v1. That's how strong it is.
Yeah, easily. And it encourages, and the ulterior effect to this is that it encourages you to use surgeons and monks because you want to keep the promotable units alive. So the idea that like you're sending in the unique church card, you are building the church. This is smart, right? Because then now you're saying, okay, well, I'm not just going to sacrifice my army here. I'm going to pull back, and I'm going to make sure that I'm going to heal, those musketeer units that are promoted in order to stack that. So it kind of creates a new dynamic in gameplay because I never thought of anybody really healing their units too much.
Mm-hmm. And one thing to note for the viewers is that the promotion do not work off of base stat but total stats. So promotion get even better with age. For example, if you have a promotion for 20% and you have a vet musketeers, it will increase the HP by the whole 20% of 180, not 150, which is the musketeer base HP. So you can imagine that in H5, you will get the 20% of the whole 300 HP. And even if you get advanced arsenal, or like the French now, the long range infantry points that also applies to musketeer now, it will also take this 15% into account. So it can really snowball out of control completely and get you really high HP musketeers. And I think it's the HP of musketeer that you can attain with France and France alone in H5 with full upgrade is 422 HP, which means they would actually resist a falconet shot.
You
So
have
this is
that, right?
pretty cool.
Yeah, you have that, and that's definitely late game, mid game, and late game. France is
Mhm.
very good if you can play it right. But then you also have the big one as well as Ancien Regime,
Which is
right?
H2,
Where
don't trust the patch.
yeah, that's which I think it should be age one personally, but it is my opinion that France is always best with native play. I always felt like for the past few patches that the way to really play France is to emphasize the natives and now to have the Bourbon units, you have the Royal Musketeer that you can train, and then you have eventually the Royal Dragoon. That because when you're dealing with natives, you don't get to really decide your unit composition. So you have to make sure that you have at least 2 to 3 different kinds of units for what you're going to be facing. Having this and having the Royal Musketeer gives you a fantastic baseline in order to, kind of complement whatever unit composition that you're getting because of your map with the natives. And then in addition to that, you have these technologies that come alongside of it too that are in accordance to the House of Bourbon. So it's a really strong card, and it just further emphasizes the natives, the native play with France.
Mm-hmm. Because right now you will have, even if your TPR siege down, suddenly your H2 native combat or your wilderness warfare is not useless anymore because it benefits ancien regime units.
Right.
And also something else that was not really put
How do I
forward
say
is
that?
this
How do
sans
I
Suisse.
Sans Suisse? Okay.
The sans Suisse card, which is basically an across the board buff for crosspike. And to give you more details about how it works, it increases the ranged armor of crossbowmen and the melee armor of pikemen and halberdier by 10. So pikemen will have 20, halberdier will have 30, and crossbowmen will have 30 range resist. And it also gives you 10% armor on top of it. I did a build on it, and what I can say is it's really interesting because you now have the same range with this as skirmisher with more base damage. So the interesting part is French do get access to the H4 Papal Guard, giving you free upgrade for your pikemen and crossbows. You have the plus 15 and plus 15 that you always had for crossbows, so long range infantry hit points and team ranged infantry attack. And you really have decent crossbows now, and with an economy that can really afford to pump them out of 2, sometimes even 3 racks, you can have a decent mass of crossbowmen and pikemen, and really, capitalize on this, knowing that even if they go H3 and you go H3 right after, you have a 2 FARC shipment behind it. You have a 3 cuirassier shipment to help deal with a pesky mass of skirmisher, but you can deal with them in the first place with your crossbows, unless your opponent is really good with micro, because crossbows do have far less range.
One big question that I have about Saint Suisse is that if you go back to the French home city, there
Just
is
change it for the viewers. French.
There's an H3 card. I don't know what it's called.
Tirailleurs?
Yeah, TIS. So I wonder if the upgrade carries over.
I'm pretty sure it doesn't. Because you already have access to the skirmisher units, and when you do Saint Suisse, it really doesn't affect skirmishers. I would say, however, that this reduces the value of Tirailleurs. Because now, well, you have invested a whole card into this, and you have this Saint Suisse that is rendered essentially not useless, because you still have pikemen and halberdiers, but much less potent, even if I have it in the deck. I think it will be more of a backup plan. So maybe moving on to other parts of the French build and the French.
Yeah, I think the one other big thing that we need to talk about is obviously the revolution. I think people would be upset if we didn't talk about it.
Let me just add real quick, they did get 9 Irish Brigadiers, which is cool, and the Giant Grenadiers in H3, which is pretty potent. People are really afraid of this card, especially when you have like a bunch of skirms and suddenly there's Cav, but when the Giant Grenadiers pop, well, Cav's in trouble. But go ahead.
Yeah, they have. I think the revolution option for France is more of like a fan demand as well as an aesthetic. It's surprising that the game takes place in the time period that it does, and it never had a revolutionary France, considering that it is probably the most single important historical event in all of human history, outside of the death of like Jesus, perhaps. Like, you cannot understate the importance of the French Revolution. So the idea that it just never had a place in the game is like fascinating to me.
Especially when you have a revolution mechanic.
Yeah, but to be honest with you, at the same time, I'm not entirely sure what the viability of it is. I think it's cool that you're gonna have this like crazy like masked military unit in the sans-culottes, like that, can gather but then fight, right? Like, and that's like kind of the whole point. Like, has that like quality of the levé en masse, right? Like it has that like, but I at least my initial impressions of it, because I haven't seen it too much in action. I haven't used it in a competitive sense. Obviously in build testing I've used it. It's like a fun aesthetic, right? It's just like it needs to be in the game, but like exactly what role does it play, I'm not sure. And then of course you have the Napoleon part of it, which is like the revolution within the revolution, in which like that's like a super expensive thing and then changes the deck over. So there's some funky stuff that you can do, but to what extent, it's probably more of a treaty thing perhaps, or an FFA. I don't know.
I think also that there was so much stuff that they added for flavor in this patch, which I like. Not everything has to be competitive, but whenever they open a path for theory crafting, it's so good because you know that maybe, as you say, they're just a build waiting to happen. The main problem with Revolution is that there's such a high, you know, threshold because you need to reach age 4 and you need to have 3,000 resources. And even if you want to go to the revolution within the revolution, which is the Napoleonic era, you need to have like about 5,000 resources just to get access to new cards, which are admittedly extremely strong. For example, you have a card that enables your grenadiers to act as villagers, so you can have like essentially no limit on the amount of villagers you have.
Yeah.
Which is wonderful, especially since you have 200 pops, so which is way more than the 80 pop of villagers you can get with France. So there is some things to explore, but it's really hard to get there reliably, especially in 1v1. Maybe in 3v3, where the meta tends to favor slower, more economic focused build, but not a lot of data yet.
No,
Any
I
final
think
thoughts? Oh, sorry, go ahead.
yeah, the only final thought that I have is like I could see it having like in the same way that the where historically where revolutionary France was able to push out Britain, Austria, Prussia, the first coalition that was coming for the National Assembly. It would probably work the same way, where you could do the revolt later into the game, and all of a sudden you have this mass of sans-culottes that you can just throw at your opponent and just kind of sweep through. And I think that's really exciting. You know that I'm a huge Francophile and a huge fan of the French Revolution. I wouldn't say a fan because you have the Reign of Terror and the rebellion in the Vendée. But the history of that, and I think it kind of speaks to that within the game, right? There's a mirror there, I think, where there is potential where your opponent, it's got this one huge push that's coming in, and then you pop the revolution, and then you're able to then respond in kind. Is really interesting. I'm just surprised that you don't have any sort of like little like guillotine.
You do have a guillotine card.
Well, there's a guillotine card, but a little model, model guillotine where poor Louis will find himself, and so.
I guess they didn't want to, upset people with potentially disturbing content.
the massacre of the Champ de Mars, like the whole thing. So whatever. Anyway.
I would say on my final thought on France that maybe watch out for a potential build with the logistician, give you all access to an early arsenal with the HP upgrade, cav upgrade, and maybe a mix of sans-suisse crossbowmen and pikes and buffed up cavalry because you have a lot of access to the arsenal. That would be possible. Be extra careful about the native play that just got so much better and so much reliable with the cards. And overall, beware of everything in our friends because everything just got better.
But I still don't think they're S tier. I don't think they're S tier, but they're
A+.
Their viability, their viability has increased quite a bit.
Germany, and I think maybe this will be the whole thing for part 1 because we already have like a 1 hour and 30 video.
Yeah. So, okay. Germany.
Let's go with Germany. Germans, they got quite a bit of interesting new cards. The Prince Elector card. So I think is really interesting because you do get access to 2 different kinds of musketeers with Germany, albeit with a build limit, and they do cost population, but it really helps you fill a hole in your roster with H2 Germany. You also have princely Bavarian chevaux which are chevaux légers are essentially dragoon, but with a very, very good melee attack. So you can think about the new Swedish Hackapellet that we'll cover in another part. And you do get 2 Prince Chevaux Légers with it, 2 and not 3, because if I remember correctly, Prince Chevaux Légers are pretty strong and way stronger than 3 Uhlans. So you also get the new Scharnhorst reform, which makes crossbowmen fully replaced with Landwehrs. And Landwehrs are essentially gunpowder variants on the crossbow. They still cost 40 food and 40 wood, but their multipliers are significantly diminished. And what that means is, as you see, you can no longer really counter dragoons. But you can still counter heavy infantry, but because as gunpowder skirmisher, they do benefit from counter infantry rifling. So I think this card is superb for Germany. Germany always had a knack for a crossbow pike. That was not the strongest build in meta build being semi-FF. But there was always a decent crosspike with Germany because you always had Uhlans at the ready because of the way the Civ works. You get 2 Uhlans with each H2 shipment, sometimes even 3 if you go with the logistician. So you always have this, rounded composition of 1 light infantry, 1 heavy infantry with either pike or doppelsoldners, and a cav unit. And you can really move with those 3 and really do something really interesting in H2. But you couldn't go very far with it because Germany doesn't have anything to buff crossbows. They do have +30 on their pikes and doppelsoldners because they have the 3 attack, HP, and combat of melee infantry. But the main star of the show in a cross pike rush is not the pike, really, unless it's for siege. It's really the ability to have this mass of cheap ranged unit to have this, death ball going that you can protect from cav with the pikes. And then when you're sure that your, opponent is hidden behind walls or building, switch to more pike production, really just push in with raw power and raw number. And now you can completely switch the strategy and have this strong gunpowder unit that, by the way, is advanced, affected by all the advanced arsenal tech for gunpowder. And the other thing is Germany, with their church card, get access to Tilly's Discipline, which increases the cost of all infantry unit by 10%, but increases their speed by 20%. And if you have advanced arsenal, you have a 44 food and 44 wood. So the increase in cost is negligible. To have a 5.2 speed skirmisher, giving you, and that would be an exaggeration, but I'll say it, a poor man's Bersaglieri in H3, which is extremely potent because now you can pressure on the map really, really fast, having them being accompanied with, pikes, because pikes do go fast too. And the only thing that can catch up to them is either goons or hussar that you can pretty much threaten with either unit. Because even if the lander does not hard counter goons, as you can see, they still have a really good base damage. It's actually 25% more damage than a regular crossbow. So we have really something to look out for in the cross pike from Germany. And Germany having one of the best carded pikes in the game makes that even better.
It's all, I mean, it's all great changes in terms of just the the overall feeling of the Civ in terms of, now we haven't talked about the mercenaries, but the emphasis on the mercenaries is huge, I think.
It's
In
coming,
addition to the and in addition to the fact that, you know, they have, in the same way that they being France, have the House of Bourbon, the ability to kind of just send in a card and then immediately you have that royal house that is, you know, that coincides with Germany. It just makes sense to me. You know, it's like,
Mhm.
okay, like you're playing as the Germans, why wouldn't they be able to have the royal house? The Landwehr are very, very good. I wouldn't be surprised if they're tweaked a bit in the future. I just think Germany is still a very high demand civ out of the player that is using them. They do require like pretty intensive care in terms of just tracking everything, because built in with the mechanic is the raid, like, and so you're constantly kind of pushing and raiding, but yet at the same time, you know, managing an FF and producing an army, and there's a lot going on. But the Lenvera is, like you said, is very, very good. And so I think perhaps maybe Germany can move away from kind of the naked FF, pretty stuck meta that they found themselves in, where that was a pretty consistent thing that they had to do. So
Mhm. And I agree with you on the fact that a lot of this patch is about giving options, like opening up the cross pike even more for Germany, even having like this new witch hammer which sends inquisitors, and that allows you to do like this weird timing which you can pretty much hire inquisitor for anything that moves or at least doesn't move because it's buildings, and just throw them at the enemy. And now inquisitors are siege units that are extremely strong in terms of siege damage, but that do less damage now to cavalry. They used to be like siege pikemen, weird mix. Uh, and even this opens up like a new way to do an early rush with Germany.
yeah,
Death Ride gives them an option of having uh, this card that allows you to pseudo overpop, because Totem Koth Hussar consume only one population slot, so you add more army on top of your army. And even the March Revolution is like this Sepoy rebellion card that India has, which is, you don't really have a revolution. You can still train settlers, but you can, have this huge wave and then reboom behind it should, the situation allow it, which combos super well with Germany because they have a card allowing them to trade settler wagons from their mills. Of course, it would be like 100% of meta because this card is not really a meta card unless it's true. We're talking treaty, where I think it's pretty core. And you could imagine something along the lines of get H4, get your first boom going, send Germantown farmers, have this, maybe 3 TC4 mills. Suddenly you send March Revolution, you have this gigantic wave, and right behind it you begin to train again with the food you have banked up to really create your economy back. Uh, that could be a thing. And of course, it's off meta, but it could be really an interesting play to see. And as you mentioned it, finally, mercenary camps allow them to build a lot of mercenaries. New cards that were added, native units and mercenary cards, really open up the Germany's ability to send even more mercenaries, and it really makes the Wallenstein contracts even better. So this is the church card that removes the costs for mercenaries, and now you can really keep going and keep sending this mercenary card over and over again because you have more one time, because it's only one time mercenary shipment that are free. You can really send just more of them now.
yeah, it kind of allows them to once again fall back into emphasizing the fortress play, that they've kind of had to do lately. But
Mhm.
then you can add just just these really insane shipments, and you can train a lot of mercenaries to coincide with the regular forces that you have, and it's kind of like a very unique way of like adding more flavor to the Civ that is fitting with the Civ, but then
Mhm.
you're not necessarily fundamentally changing the way that it plays. Like Germany is still very much a fast fortress kind of Civ, but now they have all of these mercenary options, and you may even see mercenary options be able to come out in Age 2. So that's a possibility as well. So to kind of go along with the theme that we were talking about earlier. So
Mhm.
this is all very good, and I do think it makes Germany very, very, very strong.
Mhm.
But I don't know
So
about their popularity like too much in terms of mid elo. I can't say that I've seen Germany too much on the ladder.
I'm not a big ladder player, but I love my Germans. This is one of my main civ. You always they feel really fun to play. Like this, uh, always Ulan's microwing civ because you always put the pressure. You always have something, the ever looming presence of a Ulan's in your base, killing your villager like 5 hits and just getting the hell out of here. It's always something you have to take into consideration against a German player, and it really is something I enjoy about them. So the thing to watch out to give a conclusion about Germans, uh, Bosniak allergy, because 7 of them in H3 is oof, you're not gonna like this card. Um, this could really very well be one of the strongest mercenary card now for Germany, and maybe that's I'm biased with that, but maybe Crossbike now for Germany can really be a strong play, and of course late game mercenary spam could be a thing. Should the German player have a good gold economy, especially I think in team games, where the only limit mercenary was either the number of cards they had, but also the number of taverns they had. Having 4 taverns essentially removes the the, 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 the problem of mercenary, which is it takes a million years to mass them up. So you could really expect to see some late game mercenary push definitely from Germany. Do you have any final thoughts?
No, I just firmly agree with all that you said, and they were deadly before in the right hands, and they'll just continue to be even more deadly in those same hands. I don't know exactly where this puts them in terms of any sort of hypothetical tier list, but I don't think really the mechanics have changed very much. Just rather um, their ability to have really strong units to back them up. So I'm wondering how it's going to go.
Mm-hmm. In terms of tier list, I think they slightly went up, but then again, everyone slightly went up. So I think that I think that they're still a good A tier civ,
Yep.
at least in 1v1.
Yep.
So we will cover the other civilization in a part 2 of this video. There was so much going on. We expected to have like a 1 hour chat, and we just kept going on because there was so much detail I wanted to give you guys. I hope you enjoyed. Congrats to people that followed until the end. We'll promise there will be a part 2 going very soon. I can promise that because the next is Hodeno Shoni, and such chat that would straight up kill us if there was not another Hodeno Shoni overview.
Oh, geez, yeah.
I really hope you enjoyed. Thank you so much, Search Dad, and thank you to all the others, casters, Platypus, and McCleaves before him, and also Pistol Pete that added his 2 cents as a Brit main. Thank you so much for being here. If you like this kind of content, really, we do encourage you to leave a comment and a like, because it's new territory for us. If you have way to improve, please do send them to the comment. We know it's a long video, and maybe you have way to either shorten it or making another format. Please tell us, so we're really looking for feedback on how to make the community more more content, and a different kind of content, rather than the casted game you often hear from Sir Shagdad or myself. Thank you so much again, and we'll see you next time.